Hi everyone, this is Anna Finch from Finch Press Publishing. Today's video is evaluating feminism and the way they represent male and female characters within the surface breaks. Please be advised there are certain issues in here that may trigger people. Things like sexual assault, abuse, domestic violence, suicide, and others. So the issue of child marriage is presented realistically, and the way she presents Gaia as the victim and how a person who's in that situation may feel the horror, the trauma, the struggle to express themselves. She presents that realistically. So that particular idea is presented realistically. Same with the issues to do with, again, another trigger warning, issues to do with rape, so sexual assault, victim blaming, abuse, body image, eating disorders. So these are some of the issues that are in this text, and she does present them in a realistic way, in the way that the mentality and the emotional capability the character has as a result of being confronted by sexual assault, by being a victim of abuse, and the desire to escape it. She presents that realistically. That's not the issue. The issue is she does nothing about it. Okay? She's confronted by these issues. She's forced to control her weight. She's basically forced to starve herself. Okay? She suffers abuse from the hands of her father. And from every single man around her. Okay? She is told that she's beautiful and that's all you're good for. Okay? She is told that if anything happens, she's the one to blame. Why did you lead them on? You know that you're supposed to be quiet and agree with everything he says, and then they turn around and blame her when she's following everything she's being told. But the biggest problem, if you present this as a feminist retelling, you need to incorporate feminism. Okay? You need to incorporate things like the character challenging people about these issues, or standing up for herself. Gaia is spineless. She has these desires. She practically does nothing. She waits for the things to happen. She wants to know what happens to her mother. Okay, she desperately does want to know what happens to her mother. And instead of making that the core conflict of the story, and making her desire to find out what happens to her mother the core desire and the main thing that she wants more than anything, and presenting that as the most important issue, and getting Gaia to try and explore, try and find clues, actively try and find clues, and try and figure out, right, what happened to her? Why did she leave? Okay, instead of getting her to do that, nope. She goes to the witch, says, I'm in love with Oliver. Oliver's the human guy. And says, I love him, and that I want to be with him, and I want to be on the human world, and blah, 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 blah. You get the point. Same as the original Little Mermaid and the Disney. But, same as the original, not Disney, because Ariel in the Disney one, I believe, she didn't know it was love until after she started to get to know him. It's not the best thing, but it's still better than instantly saying that you're in love with someone. It's part of the reason why I didn't like Romeo and Juliet in high school. So she goes to the sea witch and basically says, can you make me human? Can you make me human? I want to be with Oliver. Sea witch basically questions her. It's like, why do you want to do that? Okay, yeah, like, you don't even know this guy. You've only saw him the one time for like 10 seconds. Okay, and you're saying you're in love with him. Honestly, the sea witch is probably the most sympathetic character and probably the only feminist character in the whole story. But she says, yeah, I want to be with the humans. I want to be human. And it's like and she mentions as like a side thought, oh, I also want to know the truth about my mother. What happened to her? Sea witch basically asked her not to question it. She refused. She gives up asking questions despite hints that the sea witch knows what actually happened to her mother. And you get little side notes about how she's desperate to escape, which is true. She was desperate to escape before she got there, before she met the human. She wanted more, which isn't a bad thing. But the problem is her wanting more and her wanting freedom in that particular moment interaction with the sea witch is like secondary to her wanting to be with Oliver. And even prior to the meeting with the sea witch, she doesn't want to be with Zale. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Zale, she doesn't want to be with him. Who would blame her? He's freaking disgusting. And she does express that she wants to get away. Now, if this is to do with the plot, not just characterization, if she had, when she gone to the sea witch, asked for an alternative after she heard the price, asked for an alternative to that, maybe the sea witch would have granted it. I mean, the sea witch was presented in the story at the beginning as powerful, assertive. She's like confident. Okay, so maybe there could have been an alternative. Like, they did so much setup about the mother and a guy wanting to find the mother, and it didn't really go anywhere. I mean, you find out in the end what happened to Gaia's mother, and she does get little clues along the way, but she still has hope that her mother's still alive. Spoiler, she ain't. But she gets little clues, but she does nothing with those clues. Nothing. The sea witch gives her all the answers. She does none of the questioning. She does none of the explanation, none of the finding. The information is given to her. Now, like, seriously, she finds out and she connects the dots. Oh yeah, that makes sense. But instead of having her see those clues while she was still under the ocean and make those connections herself, she doesn't. The answers are given to her, and that's the biggest problem. If you say something is feminist, okay, feminist retelling, okay, then you need to live up to it. She needs, the character needs to be an active participant in her own story. Even if the character is literally voiceless, okay, have her question things. Give her a way to express herself. Have her learn how to express herself without her literal voice. not just make her a puppet to the whims of everyone else around her. Okay? Make the motivator something she's been wanting since the beginning, not something that pops out at the middle of nowhere. In the middle of the ocean. Okay? She saves one person and basically condemns another. Seriously. There are in this there are like two different types of mermaids. The mermaids and the rusalkas. Now, here's the thing. They present the rusalkas as women who have been abused, who have been tormented, so jilted lovers, people who've committed suicide. But women who are angry at what has happened to them, and they take revenge on the men. Now, here's the thing. It's implied that they only target bad men. They don't target women. They let the women die. But they target bad men. Now, the Salkas were going after Oliver, rather than just letting him drown like normal. They were directly going after Oliver. So that kind of implies that he's not the best person. Actually, in fact, none of the men in this story are in any way good at all, except for possibly Gaia's grandfather, McLean. He's the only male character, and he's like literally only a couple of sentences in the story. He's literally the only male character who stands up for his daughter and says, "No, you cannot marry my 12-year-old daughter." So, this is one character, one male character with one redeeming quality. Everything else about that character that's implied is not that great. Literally. The Seeking. So, you find out his name in that bonus chapter, Neri. The Seeking, so Gaia's father, is an arsehole. Literally, he only exists to be an arsehole. He's gross. The way he acts is horrific. He actually says, and I have got the quote here, to the person that he sold his daughter to, "Got in early. If Murugan," which is Gaia, her father refuses to call her Gaia, "if Murugan were not my daughter, perhaps I would have chosen her for myself." He basically implied that he would have married her. Ew. Ugh. And you find out that he was 63 when he married Gaia's mother. And Gaia's mother was 16 years old. 16. Now, I know this happens, like, there's reports of this sort of thing happening around the world. But this is meant to be a young adult book. It's marketed towards teens. And you've got this in there. And it's troubling. But again, it's an issue that's present in current times, so I can't really argue against the placement of this in this story. And like the other male character, this is the one that Gaia is basically betrothed to. She was betrothed to him when she was 12. Basically, this guy, Zale, came in and said, yeah, I don't want your second youngest daughter. I want your youngest. She's prettier. She's 12 when this happens. He's a sexual predator. Practically every male character in this story is a sexual predator. What the hell? Seriously. What the hell? I mean, if you want to tell a story where there are characters who treat women like this, and you have a female character who starts to stand up and starts to grow and change and challenge what's happening to her, fine, okay, do that. But here's the thing. If you have that element in the story, the character needs to grow. And that's the thing. Gaia doesn't. And another big issue with this is that the male characters are one-dimensional. Their desires are to do with one thing only in this book, and that's to do with sex and the desire to have women as possessions. The Seeking, Zale, Marlon, or Marlon not so much. Marlon is presented as the lesser of the two evils, but it's troubling. If you... The male characters are one-dimensional. Literally all they want is Gaia, a 16-year-old girl. And in the case of Zale, who's like in his 60s and 70s, which is ill, like, ugh. It's... I mean, come on. Feminism is meant to be about equality, okay? How is this equality? You've got a female character who does not speak up for herself. She does not grow. I understand her starting off in the beginning as practically voiceless and indoctrinated to the things around her. But she needs to grow from there. She needs to change. She needs to become better and actually challenge the things around her and grow a voice. And when you are telling a story with a character finding their voice, whether they're male or female, you can't have an entire gender or an entire race, if they're using race as the quantifier. You can't have an entire group of people placed as the villains and expect it to work. You can't have a whole bunch of men just presented as disgusting, arrogant, selfish, egotistical, misogynistic pigs who also happen to be sexual predators. You can't do that, because kids, whether they're boys or girls, teens, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, they're going to pick this up and they're going to see, especially if they're like The Little Mermaid, they'll see that it's a reimagining, like a retelling, and they'll look at the cover and they'll see, oh, I like The Little Mermaid. Maybe this will be good. And they'll read it. And if you have boys reading this, okay, boys could pick this up and read it. There's nothing stopping it. People like what they like. And books and things shouldn't be based on gender. But if a boy picks this up and all he sees in the characters that are like him, all he sees in the male characters in this story are horrific people who abuse those around them, how do you think that's going to make the kid feel? Like, that's not on. Like, you're marketing this to teens, not to adults. If you're marketing it to teens, regardless of what gender, if you have an entire group of people that are placed as the villains or the monsters of a story, and these are people that, this is like half the population, how is that presenting a feminist retelling? If you present the women as victims and the men as monsters, how is that feminist? How is that about equality? You're gonna have kids thinking that this is what they should expect. You're gonna have boys thinking that maybe they're monsters. And they're going to get angry because they're not monsters. And you've got them presented like this. Look, I can get from the type of text that you wanted to make a point, maybe challenge some issues. I get it. But you need to make sure the characters are not one-dimensional, okay? Alright, have one or two male characters connected to her as complete arseholes if they serve the purpose. The Seeking and Zale serve that purpose. You didn't have to make Oliver an arrogant, spoilt punk who doesn't care what the women around him have to say. He only likes Gaia because she is voiceless. And even then, he only likes her as a sounding board. She's just something that he can use to get his what he wants out because she can't respond. You could have, like, the character Oliver, you could have done so much. Like, she could have done so much with that character. Made him the opposite of the Seeking. If you're going to keep the bit where she mutilated herself for love the same, you could have made him different. You could have made him more understanding. You could have made him the opposite and made her, and in turn made Gaia want this freedom and his life on land more. And it didn't. To sum this up, this is not feminist. The only character in this story who is remotely feminist is Sido, the Sea Witch. She's the only one. She's not ashamed of who she is. She doesn't care that she doesn't fit the idea of beauty that the mermen have. She's proud of who she is. She won't be silenced. She won't give up. She won't let anyone control her. She wants to be in charge of her own destiny, and she cares about those who are treated badly around her. She wants to make sure that there are people around her that are safe. Okay? She's strong. The bonus chapter at the end of this, in the perspective of the Sea Witch, is probably the strongest part of the story. It is stronger than practically the entire story. The only time Gaia even has a spine is at the end, And the problem with that is she kills herself at the end. Those who want this or want to read this as because it's a feminist book, don't bother. As feminist text, do not recommend, because it's not feminist. There are more issues in here than there are positives. You will want to read it because you like The Little Mermaid. Okay, it's a decent book. There are still issues, but it's decent. So The Surface Breaks, I would give it 2.5 out of 5 because it is a well-written book, even though there are issues with it. It's decent. It's not the best, but it's not the worst book that I have read. So if you like this, please press the like button down below. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see more videos like this. And if you want to be notified of when I upload, hit the subscribe button. See you next time.